All right, next we're going to be looking at adding a few more tasks to our build plan and look at a few more details and features that are available to us. One of the things that we've done with this build plan is we manually kicked off the running of this plan by selecting the Run button. But one thing that I'd like to examine next is other ways to trigger this build plan. So I'm going to go ahead and select the Edit again on this build plan, and there's a Triggers tab here. And under this Triggers tab, we can specify triggers that will run this build plan. So currently, this build plan will only run if someone comes in here and hits the Run button on this build plan. But Bamboo is a continuous integration application, and really what continuous integration is all about is automatically doing a build based on someone pushing a change to the repository or something along those lines. So that's really what where triggers come in. So just for the sake of the example here, I'm going to go ahead and add a trigger. And there are a couple different options here. We can have a scheduled build trigger that will run based on a specific schedule. We can specify a daily build, a repository trigger that is a little bit more advanced, and then repository polling. And we're going to select, for this example, the repository polling. And what repository polling does is it will periodically, as often as we specify, we'll poll the repository and say, has anyone committed any new changes to this repository? So for this trigger description, I'm just going to specify repo polling. And then it asks me which repositories we want the trigger to apply to, and by default it has the one selected that is part of this build plan. And then it asks the polling strategy, which we want it to be periodically. And currently it's set to run every 3 minutes, so every 180 seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and save this trigger. And now this build plan, every time that someone does a commit to the repository that this build plan uses, so in my case it's the CAD Sandbox repository, this build plan will periodically check that, and if it detects that there have been some changes that someone has committed, it will automatically run this build plan. So that's a really big part of continuous integration, is the idea that this build server, this continuous integration application, which Bamboo is out there watching for changes and then reacting, letting the developers know really quickly if something that they've done broke the application or broke some module, something like that. All right, so next I want to take a look at adding another task to our build plan. So we've been working on these build scripts, and in my case, I've been working on the Mary's Toys project. So I'm going to go into Mary's Toys, and in Mary's Toys, parallel to Documents and Source, I have a build folder, and within the build folder, I have a build.bat file. And this build.bat utilizes the YUI compressor to minify and obfuscate some JavaScript and CSS files. So let's take a quick look at what build.bat is, what the contents look like. And you can see here it's pretty minimal. We copy all of the files from the source folder to the release folder inside of the build folder. So there will be a .release folder created here. We then minify the JavaScript files. We minify and obfuscate the JavaScript files in this release folder, so where the files were copied to. And then we minify the CSS files. And again, this is a very basic example. In Mary's Toys, we only have one JS file and one CSS file that we need to minify. So this is what the build.bat file looks like. Note that this is very, very important. Note that I do not have a pause statement at the end of this bat file anymore. If there was a pause statement here, what would happen is it would cause the dialog, once it runs, to pause and hang on screen, waiting for some input from me. However, as you may have guessed, we're going to be running this build.bat in a task in Bamboo, so we don't want that pause statement to be there. All right, so I'm going to close this out, and let's go ahead and run build.bat here. And when I run it, the command window just flickered on and off the screen. And you can see now that here's my release folder, here's my JS file, and if I look at this in brackets, it should be minified. Yep, you can see it's all crunched down. So it did what we wanted it to do, and it created this release folder here for us. So what I want to do now is I'm going to add a task in Bamboo to automatically run that build.bat file that we have created. So that's a pretty important part of the build process that we've been looking at up to this point, getting the website all ready to be deployed to the user. So let's go ahead and add that task. So I'm going to go under default job, and again under tasks you can see source code checkout is here. And what I want to do now is add another task. And for this one I'm going to add the script task. Alright, and now this script task basically allows us to run a bat file or some other executable that exists within the context of our project, or that's available to our project. So for the description here I'm going to say run build.bat. And then for the script location I'm going to specify file. So we're actually going to be calling a script file. And now this is where it gets important that we really pay close attention to details here. So for the script file, I'm going to specify my build.bat file that I want to run. And now it's important to note the location of the build.bat file. So everything we do within the context of Bamboo is based on this root directory, whatever the root directory of the repository that we check out. So in this case, everything is going to be based on this location. So CAD Sandbox is my repository folder, so it's going to be based on that. So for the path, I'm going to need to specify Mary's Toys, build, and then build.bat. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this portion, and I'm going to say Mary's Toys. I'm just going to paste that in there, build, and then build.bat. We don't need to specify anything for environment variables or an argument, but we do need to specify the working subdirectory. And for this working subdirectory, we want it to be Mary's Toys /build. So I'm just going to copy, again just to prevent any potential mistakes, I'm going to copy Mary's Toys, build, and paste that in there as my working subdirectory. And that is essentially saying execute the build.bat from within this build folder, and that is going to allow all of those paths that we have specified in build.bat, like .release and ./source, to be accurate. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and you can now see that we have two tasks that are part of this build plan. So with that additional task added, let's go ahead and run this plan again. And now I could either go back to the dashboard and run it from there, or I can simply select the run plan in the upper right hand corner here. And this has been queued, and we'll give it just a moment to run. Alright, and what we got here is actually a build failure. It came back and said that if I look down at the error summary, unable to find executable at Mary's Toys build.bat, we'll try to run again anyway. Now, handling build failure and knowing what to do when a build fails is a very big part of working within Bamboo. Now, there are a few different resources available to us up here. One of the first places you want to look, though, is under logs. And by default, what you'll be shown here is a very narrow sliver into the log. It tries to take what it thinks is most relevant to solving this problem, and it did a good job of finding that. However, if we want to see the full log, I can select View, and then it shows us the full log, which a lot of times is more than what we care about. So in here you can see that finished task running build.bat failed. And if we go back up a little bit more, the system cannot find this path specified. So let's go ahead and solve this problem. And I believe I know what the issue is here. So I'm going to go back to my RG video example by clicking on the link up there. And I'm going to go Actions and Configure Plan. And let's go ahead and take a look at my script and see what's wrong. Now I believe what I did here is, because I specified the working subdirectory of Mary's Toys build, that I did not also need to specify Mary's Toys build preceding build.bat under the script file location. So I believe that that's what my error is. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and let's try to run this build plan once again. Alright, again, it's queued up. And it looks like this was successful. So that must have been our issue. And if I look at the log here, it looks like the output from my build.bat shows, if I view the entire log, I can see that it's running build.bat. And here I can see all my messages that I had specified in my build.bat file. It's copying, minifying, and then finished, and it's done. So it looks like that was once again successful.